Hey everyone, welcome back to Garden State Growing. My name is Eric and today I have a really exciting video for you. It's going to be on seed starting, the different phases of seeds. As you see, I have 3 different trays here. I have one that's just starting to germinate, one that has the cotyledons on top, and I'll explain that later, and one that's starting to already get its true leaves. The last tomato planting video that I did, I guess it wasn't very comprehensive. Or not comprehensive enough. There was a lot of questions about it. And even, I had this friend that I work with, Shannon. She asked me for some tomato seeds to do a project with her daughter, Ava. Hello, Ava. She's 7 years old. She's Shannon's daughter. And she wanted something exciting, so I gave her some tomato seeds, and I gave her some starting mix, some trays, and even a small grow light. And she sent me a picture that looks like this. Now, as you look at this picture, I'm telling you, these plants are not doing good. It broke my heart. I haven't even told her yet. The best option for her to do right now is to throw those tomatoes in the garbage and start over again. The reality was, and she told me what she did right away, and so we're going to get into the most common mistakes I see people doing when they're starting plants inside. And the first one, the ultimate first one for me is personally, you don't want to plant in compost. You don't want to plant in soil. You don't want to plant in potting mix unless it's an indoor potting mix. Then it could be sterilized and it will have a lot less germs and microbes and, fungus gnats and everything else in it. So, you can plant it in indoor mix, but my personal favorite is Jiffy starting mix, seed starting mix. It's organic, and it's basically nothing more than peat moss, coco coir, and either they use vermiculite, but you can use perlite. It's just as good. So you want to plant in that because you want to have the least amount of microbes and parasites and disease entering your plants as they are germinating. If you take gardening soil from one of your raised beds and fill up these trays and do it, you could end up with a lot of problems. Okay? So that covers the first one, and that is what you're going to plant in. Peat moss, coco coir, vermiculite, Jiffy seed starting mix, or any other, organic seed starting mix that has those ingredients. A lot of times I just make it myself. I'll just take some peat moss from outside of one of the bags that I have and some vermiculite, mix it together, and boom, I have my mix for my seeds. So the second thing about starting your seeds is light. Okay, now as you saw in that picture that I showed you of Shannon's tomatoes, the stems are really long. They're really top heavy. They're leaning over, and they're white. They don't even have any green in them because they don't have any chlorophyll because they didn't have any light. Now, I told her to put them in a dark, warm place, so she put them in her cabinet, and I said that was great, but then she told me she didn't check on them for a day or maybe 2. It looks like 2 to me, and these little plants were just reaching for sunlight, and they never got to it. Now, a lot of people are under the assumption that if they have a south-facing window in their house, which I have lots, I have 1, 2, 3 that I could put, but it has to be direct sunlight. I'm not saying you can't grow plants inside on a windowsill. A lot of people do it. For vegetables, they need a lot of sunlight, minimum 6 hours. 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight, depending on what vegetable you're trying to grow. And preferably 12 to 16 hours if you can get it, So at some point, if you're going to grow your plants inside, you're going to need to think about supplemental lighting. Like I did, I gave her a small light, which is fine. It's one of those incandescent screw-in lights, and she just has a lamp that's adjustable that I told her to put about 2 to 3 inches above, the plants, unless they seem stressed, then move it away a little bit. I'm going to bring you over because I want to show you the light that I'm using, even though I'm telling you right now, you don't need to go that far. I have a light that big because I continue to grow things inside the house, and that's all this, the light they're ever going to see. So let me bring you over there to show you that real quick. And there's another thing I'll show you over there. And then I'll bring you back to these trays and I'll show you the different development stages of. Okay, guys, so we're at my small little, I think it's a 2 foot by 2 foot or 2.5 foot by 2, maybe a 3 foot by 3 foot, it looks like, with my Mars Hydro light. Now, this is a Mars Hydro 2000 watt. That's debatable with grow lights because we all know LED grow companies, it doesn't produce 2000 watts. It only takes in 200 or 500 watts. It can't put out more than it takes in. But anyway, I'm not going to get into grow lights. This is for seedlings, for just starting stuff inside, this is way too big. Matter of fact, it's way too close for the power that this light is, and I'm going to have to raise it up. Now, the other two things I wanted you to notice is I have a humidity dome on this one, keeping the humidity in. All right, these are eggplants, more peppers. Peppers like a little bit of heat, and not just because they're spicy. No, to germinate, they could use a little extra heat. So this humidity dome keeps humidity and heat in. But I also, right here, is I have a heat mat that is slightly warm. But when I water my plants, it's going to be enough to raise it up a couple degrees, maybe 5 or 10 degrees, and help those things germinate. Now, let me go back and I'll show you the trays. All right, guys, I decided to film this inside of my grow tent just to give you better examples, okay? Now with this one, you can see that they are starting to sprout. So before these sprouted, I had them blacked out. Just like I have a piece of cardboard on top of this humidity dome, it's not necessarily blacking it out, but it is reducing the amount of light they get until they start germinating, okay? So it is at this point that I unblock them out. Now, there are some other ones that aren't germinating yet, but that's okay. I want these to start getting sun the minute they start poking their head out of the soil. I could have waited one more day, but that's it, one more day. And then I would have had to bring them up. Now, over here are the tomatoes. These are the backup tomato plants that I planted. And as you can see, like I mentioned before, they have what is called cotyledon leaves on them right now. Now, these are the first leaves that come out of the seed shell. And regardless of the type of tomato that I plant, they all basically look exactly the same. Okay, now they will shed these leaves. As you can see here on this one plant, it's got the 2 cotyledons at the end, and then right in the middle, it's starting to produce its what we call true leaves. Okay, now once these true leaves, I think right down here, we have some more that are starting right in the center there, the true leaves with the cotyledons on the end. Once these get to the point where it has nice true leaves on it that maybe twice the size of the ones that the cotyledons right now, I would be thinking about either transplanting these out into my garden or putting them up in a bigger pot. Okay. Here I have my squashes, which grow a lot faster than other plants. Normally, I don't even plant these inside. I just plant them directly outside. But because I wanted to shoot some video and I wanted to show you, some stuff about them. Now, as you can see, these have cotyledons as well, but they're very large. Okay, because these are squashes and that's how they grow. But in the center here, we are starting to get some true leaves. Now, these leaves, just like with the tomatoes, are starting to actually take on the definition or the look of the plant that they're growing up to be. Before this, it's hard to tell. Well, I mean, I could definitely tell that these are squashes just by the way they grow. But down here, I mean, for all you know, they could be pepper plants. But they're not, okay? They're tomato plants. So over here, this one's germinating. So I got them in the light, and I got this one covered. Now, like I try to say, the minute that things start germinating, you want to remove it from the heat mat. So this one here, I'm going to take, and I'm just going to, hold on a second. All right, so soon as they germinate, soon as they pop up through the ground, I take them off of the heat mat. So right now I only have my heat mat underneath the plants that that have not germinated yet. And then with this humidity hood, after my plants get to about this size right here, even with just the cotyledons on them, I'm going to remove this humidity dome. Because that humidity dome would not do good with plants this size. It would be way too much water, way too much humid. You'd end up with blight. You would end up with powdery mildew. You would end up with fungus on the top of your soil. You would end up with mold, algae, and everything else that's not good for your plant. Now, to prevent some of that mold and algae, if you'd like, you can sprinkle some cinnamon on when the plants still have not germinated yet. It will not prevent the plants from germinating, but it will help to cut down on things like mold, funguses, and algae. All right, so that's it looking at the trays. I hope I gave you a good distinction between the different levels of growth between seedlings germinating, turning into plants, and then getting almost ready to start being transplanted. As soon as I see each plant have at least 2 true leaves, at least this size, then I'm going to upgrade them to a bigger pot, or I'm going to get them outside in the garden. Okay, so one of the next biggest mistakes, so I guess this would be like tip 3 or 4 by this point, I don't know, I'll throw a number up at the screen, is watering. Okay, now while they're germinating, I leave them with the moisture that was left in them when I first planted it. And the easiest way to tell, there's 2 ways you can tell if they need to be watered. One is you'll start to see the soil start breaking away from the sides of the pods and pulling in and looking dry. That's a signal that your plants need to be watered. The next one is weight. Actual weight of the tray. Lift it up. Feel if it feels heavy. It'll take a little practice to get to know, like this one right here is very heavy. And it's got water in the bottom. I know I do not have to water that. This one, for plants this size, could definitely use some water. Absolutely, the pan is dry. It's decently light. This one down here, it feels decent. And the top definitely looks moist. So I'm definitely going to give this a day, but I'm going to check on it tomorrow because it can change drastically from day to day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to water this, and I'm going to show you 2 different ways that I water and why I water that way. All right, so the first way I'm going to water is I'm not going to water from the top. I don't want to get these leaves wet. I don't want them sitting in too much moisture. I don't want them getting powdery mildew or blight or early blight. So I'm just going to water them from the bottom. Now, remember, my plant cells that I planted these in have holes in the bottom. This is going to help the roots. They're going to want to go down to the water. So it's going to help establish a better root system for these plants. Now, the second way that I water, okay, now this has water in its bottom, but I'm going to just show you before the seeds germinate or when they are this small, it is okay to take just a little spray bottle and give it a little misting on top to help them germinate. The seeds need moisture in order to germinate. So on the ones that haven't germinated at all, I'm okay with giving them a little bit of extra moisture. I am not going to do it to these because the moisture on top of the leaves is bad for the plants. So I'm just going to add water to the bottom. Actually, this one I'm going to do tomorrow. And like this one, I added water just right to the bottom of the pan. The roots are going to go down and try to suck up that water. And this one, since I know it has enough moisture in it, I'm just going to leave it alone. All right, learning how to water your plants is one of the most important things that you can do for not just your seedlings, but for your trees, your larger plants that are already in your garden. Underwatering and your plants will shrivel up and die very quick. You will see the leaves start to droop. They will start to shrivel up. The stems will start to shrivel up. But on the other side, like I talked about with all the moisture, overwatering will cause something that's called dampening off. And literally overnight, your plants will look like this. You'll come the next day, and they will be shriveled up, just, like when you had no water, and they will be dead and floppy and thin and on the ground, and they'll die. They don't need to drown in water in order to survive. All they need to do is have slightly moist soil, and they will continue to thrive. Practice watering on different plants. Don't try to overlove your plant by putting fertilizer in too soon or water too much water too soon. They don't necessarily need to be watered every single day. This one up here probably watered every other day. This one down here probably watered every 3 or 4 days. And this one down here probably watered once a week. And that's it. And this one I haven't watered yet. The humidity dome's keeping the moisture in. And they haven't even germinated, and the peat moss mix that I have is still very damp. So I'm not even concerned about them. Now you may ask, why am I keeping this one up top if I said that I don't put it under light until they germinate? Well, I want it up top because I want the heat mat from below and I want the warmth from the light on top. That's why I just put the cardboard here to block that out. And once I start seeing them germinate, I'm going to remove this. All right. Biggest mistake I see, not just beginner gardeners, but advanced gardeners too do, like I did this year, was I took a gamble and I started my plants way too early. Now, because I did that, I was pressured to get them out to the greenhouse sooner so I could start my second round. And I was pressured to get them into the ground sooner, which is the reason why I lost 27 plants. Okay. So as you can see, these plants are way too big for the containers they are in. So I am going to put them into a new container. The way you can tell when to start your seeds is just look at the back of the packet. And some of the seeds will say 8 to 12 weeks before your last frost date. Some will say 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. Some will say 3 to 4 before your last frost date. And some will say direct sow in the ground. There's a lot of vegetables that do not like being replanted, and a lot of them are like beans, peas, and especially root vegetables like beets. Well, radishes pretty much grow on anything. But any other type of root vegetable like carrots. Carrots do not like being transplanted. There are people that do it, but I've seen too many people not be successful at it, including myself. So my recommendation is to find out what your last frost date is in your area. Do a Google search for it. Or you can use what I use, and that's Clyde's gardening tool. It's a slide rule thing. Do a picture of it or put a link in the description below, and you could use that. That's why I estimated that my last frost date was between April 5th and April 15th. We're running a couple weeks behind that right now. That's okay, except for the fact that I'm pressured. I'm going to have to just give my plants a lot of extra care inside that greenhouse until they're ready to come out. Now, like I said, where the plants say 8 to 12 weeks, go with the 8 weeks. Where it says 4 to 8 weeks, go with the 4 weeks. And if it says anywhere sooner than that, just go with the lower number. Unless you live in an area where you know for a fact that your last frost date is blah, 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 like, Southern California, Florida, Texas, where it's generally pretty warm by your last frost date. You might not even have a frost date in Florida, So that's my recommendation on when to start plants. So I obviously made this mistake and I planted these too soon. That's why I'm going to go and get these into the container. Okay, everyone. That's going to be it for this episode of Garden State Growing. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a little something about germinating seeds, watching them grow into seedlings with the cotyledon leaves, and then watching them grow to get in their true leaves and be ready to either up pot or transplant out into your garden. Coming soon on the next episode of Garden State Growing, I'm going to take some of my tomato plants and I'm going to plant them into containers. I'm going to show you how I prune them, how I single stem them, how I plant them in the pot, what I amend the soil with, and how I trellis them up. And as a bonus, I'm going to show you a little device that makes watering your plants almost foolproof. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this with your friends and your family. Let the YouTube gods know that there's quality content here and help broadcast my message out to a lot more people. Thank you so much again. I love you. Have a great evening. Good night.